Hello, Steve
Hello.
Klein. Thank you so much for inviting us into your studio today. I see that you are in your studio. You got your
I
work behind
am.
you, and you are located in LaConner, Washington. Hello.
Hello, and thank you for having me, Jodie.
Absolutely. As we talk about climate pledge and glass, and particularly your glass sculptures, you and I were just talking before we started recording, but what do you hope that a policymaker is going to glean from looking at your glass sculptures?
Well, that's a really interesting question as I'm thinking about it, who are the policy makers? And I look at my work more as objects that might appeal to policy influencers
Yeah.
instead of makers. And at times, those influencers are children because first of all, they're the ones that will be most affected by climate change and by global warming right now. And they're being brought up to care about that. And when they see the work and talk about it in the
Yeah.
classroom, they're going to go home and tell their parents about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where change will happen. I think we have to take it out in a way out of the realm of politics because it's going to be a constant fight in the political arena. The corporations that want to dump their stuff into rivers or drill for more oil or do more fracking are going to
Yeah.
fight any type of environmental protection, evidenced by the case, I believe it was last year, West Virginia versus the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of West Virginia. But, I mean, the reality is we have a Supreme Court that's very conservative right now, and they are not going to rule with environmentalists. So, I guess in a way I've kind of skirted around your question, and my
Yeah.
work is to just bring awareness that there's a lot of beauty and the pieces are meant to be beautiful. They're not meant to be ugly. They're not meant to uh, hammer someone over the head. They're meant to be beautiful, and they're meant to say, look at if we don't make changes, the beauty we see in nature, the beauty we that sustains our life every day is going to disappear.
Absolutely. And as we record this in 2023, yeah, you're right. Our Supreme Court is very conservative. And I just keep going back to what you're saying with the children, because Earth is the one thing that every single human on this earth has in common is our Mother Earth. It's the one thing
Exactly.
that brings us all together. Well, I'm going to start sharing my screen because I would love to talk about your work. And yes, in one of your last reviews at the exhibition you had, A Precarious Edge at the Museum of Northwest Art, one reviewer said it's beautiful, sometimes mysterious. So, as we talk about your work, I'd love to have you share a little bit more about your journey into uh, Firestorm, where it's 32 elements of kiln cast glass.
Yeah.
What was your aha moment when you knew that you wanted to make work around the climate crisis? And how'd you come up with this form?
Yeah. Well, actually, Jody, there's two different pieces there. The green is titled Forest. The the orange and the yellows and reds is titled Firestorm, and they're attached in in a lot of unfortunate ways. That green can turn into orange too quickly. I've had a couple aha moments. The first one that really started making me aware of the what's happening in the forest. I was several years ago. I was in Australia
Mm.
teaching, and I was taken into a park or a forest called Tidbinbilla. And the year before, there had been a fire there. And walking through the forest and seeing remnants of animal carcasses, remnants of trees, and you could still smell the
Oh,
the burning wood. Uh, it was sad. It was there was in a way there was no beauty left. There was no happiness left. There was nothing but sadness, and uh, that walk, the images from that walk are ingrained. They're in my head. I can't get rid of them.
they're
And then
haunting
a couple
you.
of years, I'm sorry, Jody.
They're haunting you.
Oh, they haunt me all the time. Yes, all the time. Then a couple of years ago, in California, the Paradise Fire,
Oh,
uh, a good friend lost her home, lost everything. Basically, they were on vacation when the fire hit, so they couldn't even pull out their pictures or their computers. They literally lost everything. Um, and several conversations with her. I mean, they recovered, and but just the thought of losing everything and having a friend lose everything was again, it's haunting. It's sad, and
and devastating.
and then over the years, we live in this beautiful place in LaConner, Washington. It's absolutely beautiful here. But there are times we get smoke from forest fires that are in eastern Washington, depending on the way the wind's blowing, sometimes in Canada. And it shrouds the beauty here. It has a very much an effect on the air. We can't go outside and
You
hike in the
Yeah,
woods.
we can't even go outside.
Yeah.
I mean, the
So
index is over 250. I think we've had 9 consecutive years where the index has been over 200.
yeah, yeah. So those those were I guess, the aha moments.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
funny. Uh, growing up back in the 50s, we used to see Smokey the Bear. I mean, it was part of our school. Every year you'd have a little lesson in Smokey the Bear. Only you can prevent forest fires.
Absolutely. I
You
remember that
know,
one.
yeah. Okay. I mean, in a way, uh, the you can prevent forest fires has expanded. And what we can do then back in the 50s as compared to what we need to do now is a lot different. And I think sometimes that had I made this work in 1950, I don't know that I would have made this work in 1950. I don't know if the impetus to make it would have been there, and I don't think the viewer or the audience would really care that much because it wasn't so prevalent.
Yeah, and I do strongly believe that the art historians, those academics that were leading the charge of what art should be, probably would not have taken it seriously. And we are just in a position now to take your voice seriously. We are in a crisis and we need a creative solution.
Exactly. And you know, this piece, it's about 25, 30 feet long with all the different components. And I looked at this piece not as an object like I've normally made for the last long time,
Yeah.
uh, but it was a story. It was set so that people could walk along in a way like you're walking through the forest and you can see it, and it was set up so that when you came into the museum, you started at the end and you walked towards it. And when you came to the very end, there was a section that was clear cut. And there's a story behind that too. And then you walk to the forest, to the
Mm,
forest fire, the firestorm. And I looked at this as a story. I looked at this as a journey, not just as a single piece. It was meant to um, provoke people to think about what can happen as you walk along 25 feet of green, of beauty, of light, of blue skies, and you come to this other stuff.
yeah.
It was meant to provoke thought.
Provoke thought, and hopefully everybody will have an existential moment and go home and go inward and see what they can do.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your glass career because you have been working in glass for so long. How did you choose to take these aha moments with your glass and combine and use the medium of glass to create this installation?
Well, I started with glass because it was an opportunity to use a beautiful material, and it was about light. Uh, my work has always, I've always tried to use the light that comes from
Mm,
reflective glass. When I make a piece that sits on a pedestal and a light is on it, there's always a glow underneath the piece. And for me, that's always been part of the piece. It's not necessarily a reaction. It's not, something that just happens. It's purposeful and it's part of the piece. So uh, I look at what I make as kind of a collaboration between material, between light, and between me, and between whatever idea or whatever is driving that particular piece. Um, so,
such an awesome creative spirit.
yeah, I mean, light and reflection, sunrise, sunset. I know it's rather cliche, but probably the two of the most important parts of my life. I've got thousands and thousands of images going way back of sunrises and sunsets.
Mm,
And, in a way, a sunrise says the day is starting. I'm alive and
yes.
the day is starting. And how much more beautiful can you start the day? I mean, you just can't start the day any better than a sunrise and a sunset. When that last little bit of light fades away, it closes the day, but it closes it in an incredibly beautiful way. And regardless of what has transpired in your day, how many negative parts of your day have come and gone, that little bit of light is beautiful. And you end that with that beauty. So the light is important and the
I
reflection, and
uh
that's what it's about.
agreed. Agreed. I got to tell you I was inspired with your sunrise and sunset, and I've taken a new tradition in my life of applauding when I see the sun go down, just in thanks and gratitude.
Yeah,
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 it's a
and
magnificent. It's a
it
phenomenon. It's a phenomenon that just can take your breath away if you pay attention to it.
it can, and I told you in the beginning, I just spent 10 days up at Pilchuck, and,
Yeah,
the
tell us
sun was
more.
yeah, well, and we had great, unbelievable weather, and the sun was setting, uh, at between, about 7:40 I'm so sorry, 6:45 and 7:15, and we had our schedule set that we would regroup and, have a discussion at 7 o'clock. Well, we had to change it because the entire group was standing out on the balcony of the lodge to watch the sunset. And I look now at photos people are posting on Instagram and on Facebook, and everyone's just the sunset, the sunset, the sunset. They were spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of Pilchuck, not only are you an instructor and doing residencies there, but you're on the board.
I am.
I've been doing a little research about the board, and do you want to tell us a little bit how you guys are changing with the equipment to make it more environmentally friendly, being part of the solution up there?
Yeah, I mean the environment is on it's on everybody's mind, and it is definitely part of what our culture on campus, on the board, with staff, uh, is striving for. How do we reduce our carbon footprint? And some people say, well, you're in the forest, so you get credits. We're not looking for credits.
Right.
We're looking to reduce our carbon footprint, period. And fortunately, I chair the operations committee, which is tasked with the environmental concerns on campus. And we're looking at it really in three different ways. One is the natural environment, the second is the built environment, and the third is what our everyday functional use of campus is. So we're trying to look at all those factors in ways of reducing our carbon footprint and ways of sustaining a campus that's over 50 years old and being able to continue doing what we're doing without causing any further environmental
Mm-hmm.
danger.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of aspects in what we're doing. One exciting thing that happened this summer is the gentleman that's in charge of our equipment, Tyler Gordon, came up with a way of taking window glass
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
altering it and making it furnace glass that can be blown, and it worked, and it's working. And Pilchuck is sharing the recipe with the world. Anyone can have it. I mean, I think that's another thing um, that's inbred in Pilchuck. We want to be the leaders. We want to share whatever we do to make our community, our glass community, the art community, a better place for everyone. So, I mean, that was a really exciting thing.
That
Um,
is, and if anybody wants more information, they could reach out to me and you. I'll make sure all of our information is there about
yeah,
that. And if there's anybody that can do it, it's glassmakers. That is one of the reasons why I admire the studio glass movement and all the artists participating is because the inventiveness is just outstanding. There's there's always things churning about how to make it just a little bit different, a little bit more friendly, either so two or three of you can be working on a piece together, or so you're trying to reduce the carbon footprint. That is awesome.
right. And from a teaching standpoint, where there's been a shift in the way classes have been approached. As an example, the first class I took at Pilchuck in 1996 was a sand casting class. I went home. I was one of 10 people in the class. I personally went home, shipped home 350 pounds of sand cast glass. And I can honestly say that it never got unpacked, ever. It all eventually, when we moved out of that house, it all went to recycle. They never even unpacked it. So the waste that can happen in class and the looking at teaching as a way of saying you don't have to make it big to learn.
Right.
So more ideas of sampling, more ideas of experimentation, more ideas of learning on a scale that gives you the information you need without being grotesquely large. And I'm not saying there isn't time for making large work, there certainly is,
Yeah.
but we can substitute we can make models with clay, with cardboard, with a lot of different materials before we make things. We can make smaller samples before. So I think from a teaching standpoint, the environmental needs are being recognized and being dealt with in a good way.
In a good way. So has this large installation, has it inspired some future projects of yours?
Yes, I'm
Ooh,
actually.
is there something that you can share or is it under wraps for now?
Well, nothing's under wraps, but yes, I'm actually making another forest using a different technique. It's going to have a completely different look to it, but it's basically the same story. I just story keyword. I just I like being able to tell a story with the work. And Jody, it's interesting, and I think you and I have talked about this. There's one aspect: we make work to sell. As an artist, I have to sell a certain amount of work to maintain my practice. But I'm very fortunate in that at my age, I get Social Security, which makes a huge difference. And I don't have to make every piece for sale. I have the luxury of making a piece because I have to make a piece.
Yeah,
And that's really what started or gave me the luxury of time to make these pieces. I mean, I went, COVID was 2 years roughly, and all I made was work for the Mona show, for the Shack show, was work that dealt with the environment. Uh, and, I want to continue making that work as a part of what I do on a daily basis in my studio. What percentage it'll be of the finished work, I don't really know, but it's really, really important to me to not disappear, to not keep sharing the message that I've started sharing.
absolutely. Well, if you have time, can we talk about another piece? Can we talk about Shelter 40? This is a sculpture that was seen in a precarious edge at the Museum of Northwest Art and also at the Shack Center of Arts. Can you I love this piece. I feel like the crispy carbon black on the outside and the beautiful green for the interior really is more of an abstraction to your story. But what was your journey with this piece? How did this come about?
Well, I guess it starts with the form. The
Oh,
show form.
right.
Oh,
Here's,
there you go. You're
yeah,
telling my story. This is a stone enclosure in Scotland called a fank. And I was in Scotland teaching a class, and we were out looking at some burial mounds, and it got a really icy wind came up. And so as a group, we all saw this in the distance, and we went over and we got inside and sat down on the grass, and it sheltered us from this icy wind. And it was just the most uh, peaceful, nurturing, incredible feeling because we were looking out through the opening there. You could see all this pink ling heather was growing. The sky was blue and white. It was warm. I mean, it was just an incredible feeling. And I came back and I started making different versions of this round piece. I think back in maybe 2005, 2006, something like that.
sure.
And I originally made the first several of them utilizing the colors that I saw there, the blues and the pinks and etc. And eventually the shape became a vehicle for me to share other thoughts and ideas. And that's how this piece came about. Um, the the forest, the shafts of light going through the forest. I
Yes.
think anyone who's ever walked in a forest or hiked in a forest, you see these shafts of light coming through, and it's just stunning. It's beautiful, and this piece was just meant to be something rather simple. One is entering the forest. The black was a way of uh, in a way sheltering what's inside. It wasn't meant to be a fire or anything. It was just a way of enclosing the forest, protecting it, sheltering it, and with the shafts of light coming through. Um, I mean, I don't think my work is complicated. Uh, some people have said they see more in it than I consciously see. Maybe subconsciously, I see there's more to it. But every piece that I make, and one of the reasons I like kiln forming and fusing and casting as opposed to blowing is there's nothing instant about this work.
Mm,
I can take a week, I can take 2 weeks, I can take 2 months or 2 years to make a piece. Um, and if it's not exactly right when it's done, or if it needs another line, I can cut it up and put that line in and fuse it again. So I really enjoy that process of communicating with the idea, with the material until we're all in agreement that it's right.
right. It's that recommitment to your material and the conversation that you are having with it that I think is just genius about artists. And I really admire your creativity and especially your voice right now talking about the climate crisis. I want to thank you again for joining us, and we will talk again, my friend.
Sounds great. Thank you, Jody. Take care.